Welcome to Invisible Me, a podcast centred around invisible health issues and the feeling of not being seen and heard. Yet here I am, standing right in front of you. Does this sound familiar? Well, come join the conversation. Share your experiences. Let's break down those norms and attitudes for the better. This is a safe space to chat with me, Pat. Welcome, Steph.
Hello.
Thank you for coming along and spending some time with us today. Much appreciated.
It's okay.
I know you're a mom, lots of little kiddies, busy life, partner, family, and a career, which is awesome. So I'm personally aware of friends and family and people I know really close to me that has been diagnosed with anxiety. Back in the day, it was like, oh, she's got a problem, or she's a nervous person. She suffers with her nerves. And that's what was said when I was growing up. But anxiety's always been around. It's not a new thing, but it's become a new thing because it's been spoken about in the media, adverts, TV. It's there, and it's a proper diagnosis. And I think it's GAD, which you might correct me. So tell me a little bit, if you're okay about that, explaining it to me like I've heard about it for the first time.
I think the term GAD, so generalised anxiety disorder, that used to really annoy me because it sort of put me in a box, and the doctor would be like, well, you've just got general anxiety. But for me, it was sort of more than that. I struggled mostly with social anxiety from a very young age.
Do you feel that's two separate things or part of the one thing?
I think it's all part of one.
Okay.
But I think a lot of doctors can just sort of give people this GAD diagnosis. And obviously there's within anxiety, it's quite a broad spectrum of different things. So you've got OCD, then obviously I believe that ADHD is within that as well, and it's all linked. But I'd say I was about 14, 15 when I first got diagnosed. And I did have, I'd say, quite a unsettled childhood, and my anxiety manifested itself mainly within social aspects. So I didn't really have any friends, and I couldn't really relate to other people. I didn't sleep very well. I was worried all the time, and I'd pick my skin a lot. And I did that for, I think, about 10 or 12 years. I carried that with me throughout my life.
Did you try to hide that? Was that
an issue
all the time,
as well? All the time.
Somebody might see me picking my fingernails or whatever.
It was only on my hands. I still do it now on my thumbs. But I used to have just on one knuckle. And over the past year, I've managed to actually get rid of that.
Oh, well done.
And it's scarred, but I can now actually like hold a wine glass or a drink without being fearful of somebody else seeing it. And because I was used to try and hide my hands in my sleeves and stuff.
Well, thank you for telling me that little bit, because that's very personal.
It's a very common thing, though.
But yes, now you've said it, I can actually think of 3 more people. Because I've seen their hands, and I went, and I saw them, but didn't actually make any connections. So thank you for educating us on that.
It's really common.
Did you feel dismissed by the doctors when it says just GAD, and then did you feel like pushed to one side and here's some medication and get on with it, or is there a support? Is there help? More than you helping yourself?
I definitely felt supported when I was younger. So I think around 13, 14, we used to have school nurses back then. We don't really have that now. I had a really lovely school nurse, and I went to talk to her, and she was the first person to put me in touch with a counsellor.
Wonderful.
So I had a little bit of counselling with a lady once a week, and that really helped. And then after that, I did have quite a bit of support from my doctor.
Good.
But I just had like consecutive sessions of CBT, counselling. I tried EMDR.
So CBT is cognitive behavioural therapy.
Yeah, and then there's different types of that as well.
And what's EMDR? I haven't heard that one before.
So EMDR is to do with if you've had trauma in your past.
Yes.
So it doesn't have to be like physical trauma. It can be psychological trauma. And you basically watch the psychologist's finger go from side to side.
Yes.
And it gets both parts of your brain to work together and try and process some of the things that might have happened to you, so you can try and work through that. And it can open quite a lot of
like getting your brain in harmony. So the brain's fully working to be more productive for you. To give you the strength when you come across things that triggers.
To try and process it and
so you're like retraining the brain.
Yes.
to help you yourself.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to.
I think that's
have
how
another
it's supposed
session
to
on
work.
this.
It was
that's
very
interesting.
good. I had quite a few sessions of that, and it did help. And CBT helped. I had quite a lot of intense CBT sessions. And of course, you've got to do your homework with CBT. You've got to put it into practice.
Yes.
But I think obviously with having ADHD, doing that CBT homework, I could never
fit it in or not do it?
Never continue it. I find myself starting things and I never really finish them.
Now, that's a leading question. That's a leading statement. I love that because I'm smiling about that because it rings through to me.
Yeah.
I know I'm not diagnosed ADD. And I'm sure if I went for the tests, they would say 100% because I've researched it a little bit for myself personally. Because isn't now as an adult and people like yourself shared your stories, I'm recognising traits in myself and go, oh, I've been like this since I'm like 10 years old or actually 4 years old.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a little funny story. Church, being brought up in a Christian family, and that's all good. And I remember my mum turning around to me and saying, sit still. And I could never sit still in the seat. I mean, she'd say that to all of us, and all mums do that anyway. But it was ginormous for me to do. So I remember she let me gather up all the hymn books and the Bibles that were around, and I built houses with them. So that kept me quiet, and Mum was okay about me being quiet as long as I wasn't drawing attention.
But she was understanding though, and she saw that you physically couldn't, because a lot of parents just.
So I think it was there all the way through, and I am a fidgeter. I will play with pens and blue tack and paper clips, whatever's nearby. So that's almost like my CBT. I'm tapping, I'm doing something unconsciously. But like you said, it's always been there. You're super resilient. You had a difficult journey at a young age, and you have found ways around it. You've sought out good people. I'm delighted you'd support. And you have to connect with the counsellor. You have to connect with the nurse, the doctor.
Yeah, you have to take that first step.
You have to like each other for that trust. It's massive trust. So I'm really pleased that's happened for you. And thank you for telling us a bit about all the different elements. So then you were in your teens. Did you go to college? Were you working? Yeah. What was the next stages in your life?
So all the way through school, I did find it quite difficult. So primary and middle school, I never sort of really had any friends, and I would drift from group to group. I never really fit in. And I got to, I think I might have been about 16 during A-levels. Yeah. And I did my first year of A-levels, and then the second year I moved out of home and I went to live with a friend. And that was the point where I didn't really go to school anymore. I sort of started skiving off a bit, and things weren't great.
Was it because you didn't felt you belonged or you fitted in? Just school wasn't a happy place? Or
it wasn't a happy place. There was a lot going on. I was struggling with my relationship with my boyfriend at that time as well. Middle school was difficult as well. Again, didn't really have any friends. And then I did actually make one friend. We were a best friend. And she turned out to be part of like a cult, like a Christian cult. And then I ended up losing her because, of course, her parents decided to homeschool her. Yep. So I felt like I was an outsider. And I think I took some time. Everything becomes a little bit blurry. I don't remember stuff very well from when I actually left home. But I sort of just lost my way a little bit. And I just did college course after college course to see where I might sort of end up. Yeah. So I did level 2 beauty therapy, which I managed to pass, but again found it really difficult because of the ADHD. Yep. And then I did animal level 3 animal management. And again, I don't think I completed that course. I think I moved colleges. So I got half a qualification. And then after that, I took some more time out. And then I think that's when I met my partner, who I'm with now, and then we had children. Yeah. And then I finally went back to university. So I did everything sort of a bit muddled and backwards, but I'm happy with where I am now.
No, it's commendable. It's all good.
But I just feel like it was such a strange journey to get to where I am, and quite a struggle because there was a lot going on and I couldn't...
And lots of change all the time, all the time.
There was no stability, really, I don't think, for me.
Well, you're stability for others because you're telling your story, and this is wonderful. And you said you felt you kind of didn't fit and you always felt on the outside and trying to belong and all that. Can I just ask, how did others see you? What did you hear from them? Like neighbours or family or just others in your environment? Did they just think you were odd or she's a loner? Because people are terrible. We call each other names, put labels on people all the time. Yeah, kids are the worst.
Yeah, kids are cruel.
You experienced that as well?
Yeah, definitely.
Something wrong with her?
In primary school, I was always separate from everybody else, and even the teachers would I'd be like the naughty child. And I remember my head teacher standing me up in assembly in front of everybody and saying, this student has been naughty. And I can remember being stood there as a little girl at the front of the assembly. My mum actually moved me from that school and put me into a different school. And still, I struggled to maintain any friendships. But yeah, I guess people just thought I was strange and just a bit weird. Yeah. And I think the more you seem to be on your own, the more people, they don't come near you and they just leave you. Yeah. Then you end up feeling on the outside.
I can relate to all of that with other family members and people I know that are struggling with school and that social thing and the pressure of it. But picking up on something you said a little earlier about when you were 15 to 16, when you're that age, genuinely, your world is all about you. And we do think we're right and we do think we're... and injustice has happened and how dare people control me and tell me what to do. And we become quite powerful in ourselves and we don't want to hear advice. And we're on our own little journey. And it isn't now till we're in our... I'll just say in our 30s, for the audience to know my age. Will I get away with that one? In our 30s, we do reflect back because we now have our own kids and different responsibilities. And then we realise, well, actually, it's 15 and 16. Yeah, my poor parents or whoever. But what do you think society could do now to make an improvement? Because we are learning from people's experiences. What do you think schools should do? What would you like if you could maybe want to go on and say...
How long have you got?
How long have we got? That, for these kids that stand out, they should be nurtured and not named the naughty kid or the cheeky kid and punished because they get punished for their behaviours. How can we fix that?
I think there needs to be a complete reform, really, of schools altogether, because I think it's sort of ancient. The systems and the strategies and techniques that schools have, they're so outdated, and we've got this system where it's one size fits all, and it just doesn't.
Makes me angry.
And being a teacher myself, I found it very difficult to try and work with that system and get students through courses. But I think educating students more about different psychological problems, we'll call them problems, are not really psychological traits or personality traits. Yeah. If people were educated within lessons about them, so you know how you've got your PHCE lessons and things like that, I think if students knew like what anxiety was, or it's okay
to be not okay.
Yeah, to not feel okay and not be okay.
Make room for it.
Yeah, make room for it. But it's okay teaching all that, but then you're in an education system that doesn't really meet those needs.
Tick those boxes.
So it is very difficult. I think to improve, then there's got to be a huge
national.
change.
It has to be come from the top actually and work its way down.
And work with the parents as well.
Very much so.
Because
they need help too.
Thing.
They're at a loss.
And a lot of the responsibility obviously is put on the parents to get these diagnoses and support and help. Yeah. But you just go around in circles forever trying to get different assessments. And
it's exhausting. And exhausting living the life as well. This is why I'm a big fan of apprenticeships. Yeah. I think they're brilliant. I'm glad they're back in full force, because myself included and other fidgeters and ADD and ADHD and all the other good stuff, because this group of people, me included, we're awesome. Our brains just think differently. Yeah. So we're very creative. Hence, our minds are running at 100 miles an hour, but with all good stuff. But because we can't slow it down to fit the criteria the school wants us to write on paper and be graded, it's so difficult. So apprenticeships allows us to explore like the beauty, the animal welfare, all the different courses. And it's different, and you still get that sense of pride and accomplishment and valued and seen because you're doing this particular course you like, and you can try something else and not be ridiculed for it. And it's a different way of learning. We don't all have to conform and get A levels and tick these boxes and go to university. Society needs us all in there, and I think we're an elite group that needs to be included and loved and encouraged.
Definitely, yeah.
But as you said, we're fighting against a very archaic system. And you teach. Look at your success. You know, you're amazing. Despite all odds and all the obstacles you've come over, look where you are. You're a mum yourself, very happy in life and teaching, and you're spotting this in others. So you're nurturing your students.
Yeah.
You're doing your own wee bit, regardless of what is expected as a teacher. You go that extra mile.
It's still difficult though, because you can spot those students a mile off.
Yes.
But because you're not qualified to diagnose, you can't then go to the parents and say, oh, I think your child's got ADHD. Yeah. You can say, well, I think there might be traits here. But yeah, you can definitely spot a mile off those that are struggling, because again, they can't fit into this education system that expects you to just sit still for 2 hours and get on with some writing and do the practical that you're expected to do. And it doesn't work like that for people with ADHD.
No, far from it.
Then they end up feeling so demotivated and low self-esteem, because they think, well, why can't I sit here and write? Why haven't I got the concentration that others have?
And then hence sometimes bad behaviour comes out because they don't know how to control
there's no other way of
get those thoughts out. So they act it out, and then kids get into trouble and all sorts. So it's so hard.
I think teachers have got to be trained as well to be more inclusive. And that's difficult, because if you've got a class of 20 or 30 kids and every child is different, and then you've got those with additional needs and different personality traits, ADHD, autism, all this stuff going on, you're supposed to adapt that lesson to meet everybody's needs. It's not always possible, but if teachers had more effective training to be able to do that, I think that would help.
And all the way through, sport assistants, the dinner lady, everybody.
Yeah, they're vital. Yeah.
Everybody, because they're all part of that little person's life that day.
Yeah, exactly.
So in the back of all of that, where we are now, how easy or difficult is it to actually get a confirmed diagnosis for the child, to get any help?
For the child or the adult?
Well,
or for anybody?
We've got two stories, child and adult.
Okay, so...
in the school system and then as an adult.
Yeah. So basically, since about 2, I've always thought that he had ADHD. There was something going on with his cognitive processing, something not quite. And he really did struggle to sit still, climbing everywhere, constant accidents because he'd jump off things and just not see any danger. Constant humming, talking, singing, throwing stuff all the time. Just, he met all the criteria. And we put him in a primary school that, it was a good primary school, but they didn't pick up on his needs. They weren't supportive of that. And if I ever tried to mention anything, they would just be quite dismissive and
overprotective parent, interfering parent.
Something you're doing at home. Yeah. Perhaps you can try this behaviour strategy at home and it will just magically make everything better.
Oh dear.
And then we went to the GP and got referred to a paediatrician.
Okay.
So that takes time. That can take up to 3 months. Then we saw the paediatrician and she just basically said, I'd be very surprised if you didn't get a diagnosis for ADHD, because of course he was bounding around the office and picking up the stethoscope and all this stuff and I let him do it because I thought I need them to see what he's like.
In action, yes.
And then after that, we got a referral. Obviously, she'd referred us then to CAMS, which again, you wait in a couple of months.
CAMS stands for?
Community and Mental Health Service.
Yeah.
But I think there's a children's...
there's a children's department within it,
Yeah.
Thank you.
So obviously, CAMS got back to us within a couple of months, not to do the assessment, just to tell us that we're putting him on the waiting list, basically. And then they sent a lot of paperwork through for me to fill out, and you get a huge booklet, and you've got to fill out all the child's history and parents' history, if they've got mental health problems as well, and you draw a little family tree, and it asks you all these questions about
and that's a big chore.
How the child is at home, and
for you as
massive.
Well.
If you've got ADHD and you're trying to fill out a form like
visualising
that,
this happening.
Don't even get me started on the PIP forms as well.
Oh no,
yeah,
that's another episode as well.
That's a completely other episode. So yeah, huge forms to do, and then you package them all up, send them back off, hope they get there, and of course I didn't hear anything after that.
Yeah.
And I think it was about, I kept chasing them up and they said, oh, we haven't got anything. And I believe they lost all the forms, basically.
Oh.
So that went on for a good 2 or 3 years, backwards and forwards, trying to contact them with forms. And we just never got anything through. And I'd sort of, I think I'd got pregnant. I think I was then pregnant with my second. So things were all up in the air. And we actually moved and put him in another school.
So he's like 5 or 6 year old now.
Yeah.
You know, really in mainstream school.
Yes. So we'd moved him to a different school. Second day, when he got into his new school, they put him on the SEN register.
Okay.
I didn't say anything to them. They didn't know about any...
That was good.
Yeah.
Somebody spotted something.
Yes. And I just went...
Yes.
And then ever since then, we've been collecting evidence, and we tried to re-refer him through the GP, and she has done. And eventually he got put on the CAMHS waiting list again. And I got this letter through saying, your child is on the list for an ASD and an ADHD assessment.
Okay.
The waiting list is between 2 and 3 years. And that's sort of where we are now. And during this time, I've been backwards and forwards to the GP about different things to try and get support with that. And of course, there's like nothing that they want to do because as a child, they don't want to medicate and they just keep throwing information at me.
Yes.
And I'm like, but it's part of his condition.
And I know I'm his mum. Yeah.
And obviously, when you try different sleep strategies for like 5 or 6 years and nothing's working, you just like
where do you turn
literally screaming for support from anybody. And you're just stuck on a waiting list. So they've asked us now to try Right to Choose, which is another option for people.
Is this a new government level initiative?
I don't think it's a new thing. I don't think it's
there.
new. I think it's just that people don't know about it.
But right to choose
we all have the right to choose our care.
Okay, gotcha.
And so that means that I could go to a private clinic, like, for example, Clinical Partners, which is a private assessment clinic for ADHD and other things. And I could go privately, but the NHS would...
have to honour it.
Fund it.
Yes.
Yeah. But a lot of people are doing that now. So there's a massive waiting list with that, which is 2 years. So I figured out I'm just going to have to pay for it. So I've got a price up of what I need to get him assessed and a trial of medication if we decide to go that route. And I think it's come to about 2,300.
For now?
Yeah.
To get going?
Yeah. So I've got £300 so far. We
need to get a GoFundMe page for you.
Okay.
I'll get everybody listening and we'll get a GoFundMe. Because this is many years.
It's so frustrating.
And for a parent that hasn't anxiety or anything else, it's a massive mental exhausting chore for your child.
Yeah.
And then that affects the other children in the house, and it spills out in the whole family. So you're all on this difficult journey, and all you're saying is help.
We've written letter after letter. We've had to try and expedite it. Head teachers, people at I don't know if anybody knows the charity Selfa.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. Yeah.
But
and there's nice variety and activities, and it's a good safe place to go. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking hearing your story. I'm just sad that a modern, advanced society that we're moving along in isn't really addressing this. It's so diluted.
There's so many people waiting for a diagnosis.
My goodness. And then take a breath. If you have the energy to tell your own little story and how your diagnosis is going.
So I've actually got a full diagnosis for ADHD, severe ADHD.
Can you remember
which I like to say.
Can you remember the date? Can you remember exactly when you got it?
I think it was sometime last year.
There you go.
Yeah.
How long has that taken?
5 years on a waiting list. Yeah. But I was happy to wait because I thought, well, it's gone on for this long.
From the day of your diagnosis or that week, how transformative was that? How did you feel? How was the reaction about?
I guess I knew already. I just breathed like a sigh of relief.
It's like, yes.
Yeah. I wasn't shocked. And it was sort of a bit of closure, because I think when you get diagnosed with anxiety from like the age of 15 and you've done so many different CBT courses, counselling, EMDR, you try about 6 different types of medication and nothing's working. At that point, I was quite excited to try the ADHD medication and try getting things sorted.
And you're on that? There's a specific medicine you can take?
There's different medicines for it.
Is it trial and error as well? Do you find the one that suits you? Or has it been okay?
I think it depends who you have that will do the medication triage.
Yes.
They sort of decide what they want to try you on.
Okay.
But they initially start you off on 2 different types. So you try one first. If it doesn't work, then you go on to the other.
And you feel...
It's
grounding you, for the want of a nicer compliment.
Yeah. It sounds really cliche, like it's completely changed my life. But it is pretty amazing stuff.
Good.
And I guess some people take it every day. I personally don't. Because it's, with antidepressants, they build up in your system.
Yeah.
With, it's called Concerta. It's a slow release medication. You don't have to take it every day. It doesn't stay in your system for longer than the 12-hour period.
Okay, good to know.
So I don't need to take it if I'm just at home. Or if I'm at work, I might take it to help me function better.
Yes.
Some people take it every day.
That's useful to know, and useful for other people that are maybe at this crossroads in their lives.
Yeah.
And some people are fed up taking medication, and
It's
they're
got such a
anti-medication
bad
and going, I'm sick of
reputation.
tablets.
Yeah.
So it's nice to know it's in your system for 12 hours, and then you could go for 5 days and not have it. So you can use it ad hoc, but it's controlled by you and your choices of when you need it.
Yeah.
So
you can do it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. And different strengths as well. So my doctor decided that I could have a lower strength and a higher strength. So some days I'll just take the lower, and if I need the higher strength. But it has got a bad reputation, because everybody just assumes it's, like Ritalin.
Yes.
And it's similar sort of chemical compound, but obviously if it's slow release, you're not taking tablets throughout the day.
Yeah.
Whereas I think with Ritalin, you've got to take it 2 or 3 times a day, I think.
Yeah.
And I couldn't cope with that, because I'd forget to take it.
Snap.
Or take 2 by accident, or something stupid.
Yeah, or 2 days have passed. Oh, forgot. Yeah, story of my life.
But I think it's progressed quite well, the medication for ADHD. There's a lot of different options, and
I'm thrilled for you. I could run across the room and give you a hug. I'm so happy that you've got to that place in your life at long last. You've been seen, you've been heard. Now, do it for my kid.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
I did ask them if they could transfer the diagnosis. I said, is it possible before I go ahead with this assessment, can I give it to my son? And obviously they can't do that, because it's a different system. But
I'm going to ask you to come back, because we've talked about an awful lot today, and we've just skirted over it. And I would love you to come back, and we'll have another session a wee bit more in depth for other listeners. I want to round it up by asking you the label of the actual diagnosis. Do you tell people? Do you tell it in your workplace? Do you hide it? Are you careful? How has that affected you? How have you embraced it? Or I know, and you've protected yourself because of past history and how people treat people?
Yeah.
How have you gone forward with that?
I think I've been pretty open about my diagnosis, and I shared it with my parents. And my mum just sort of said, oh, well, I knew that. I knew that all along. You never slept. You were never still as a kid. But yeah, I think I'm fairly open with people that I trust and people that I work with, because obviously if you're open about it, you can access different support. So you've got your access to work support, which I wouldn't be able to work without that. That's been really good.
Brilliant.
That's for a different time.
Yes.
But I think you've got to be careful that you don't sort of use it to define yourself as well, so it doesn't become like your label.
Good.
Because I see it as just a personality trait. Yeah. It doesn't define who I am. And I can't use it as an excuse if I forget somebody's birthday. I can't be like, oh, I've got ADHD,
sure,
so sorry.
That would be kind of handy, are you sure?
It is handy sometimes, but yeah, I think you've got to be careful in that in that respect, because it sort of dilutes the whole aspect of having it and getting that diagnosis.
No, it's a lovely attitude, actually. It's very measured. It's controlled by you, because nothing's changed. You're still Steph all the way through to this, sitting in this chair today, and having that diagnosis actually doesn't change you. You're still the same. So choosing how you use it to help you continue in jobs and other things is the right way. But you use the word trust. Yeah, it has to be a trusted source. But you've done something massively brave. You have told everybody today.
Yes.
So thank you.
God.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming along. You've
I was
helped.
so anxious about this. And look, I've not even used my
I know.
comfort notes, as we called them.
I've had the
my essay.
Faith in you. I knew I've met you one or two times before, and I knew you'd be absolutely fine. But again, this is all the traits of anxiety and ADHD, and something that's unknown. Yeah. It's scary. It's very scary, and that's real, and that can have a massive adrenaline fight and flight and fear physically on a person's daily life. So I think we have 2 or 3 more episodes in the bank.
Yes, that'd be good.
Thank you, Steph. It's been wonderful talking to you today.
You're
Much
welcome.
appreciated.
Thank you.